What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indies Sports Ticket. I am back after a great week of vacation in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. Had an absolute blast. Just going to all the museums, read a whole bunch, just a bunch of different books, had just an absolute great time. And I am so happy to be back. I was telling my boss before I got on the air, I was like, this is the first time in my life I've gone on vacation and been excited to come back to work. So it's great. I am pumped up, juiced up, ready to go for all of my topics today. And I want to start with football. I love sports. We are 52 days away until week 1 of the NFL season. Okay, I've been on from 10 to noon almost every day during the best part of the college basketball season. You've heard me talk extensively about the NBA, about the Indiana Pacers and their Eastern Conference Finals run. And I'm going to discuss the NBA Summer League at some point today because Jarris Walker is not a bust. He's looked pretty good for the Pacers so far. So was Johnny Furphy, second-round pick from this previous draft class. You've heard me discuss the WNBA and how good of a season Caitlin Clark has had. Okay, I've talked about her a lot, like everybody else has. And I've had a great time discussing all the basketball that's been going on for these past few months. And I'm excited to talk about the Olympics and the basketball going on in that, and the swimming and everything else that comes with it. But I'm ready for football, and we are 52 days away from week 1 of the NFL season. I'm from the South. Football courses through my veins. Okay, like as much as I love basketball, I love football so much more. Okay, I'm ready for my football weekends where I sit in front of the television for hours on end, eat great food, hang out with friends, and hang on to every single play of whatever game it is that I'm watching. We are 52 days away from that. Okay, that means that ESPN has gone out and they've sent these surveys out to executives, coaches, and scouts in the NFL. And then they take these surveys and then they give a top 10 players at pretty much every position ranking. Okay, so they do this survey every single year. And it's one of the few times that we get to hear directly from decision makers in the NFL. Okay, it's one of the few times we get to hear from people that actually do this for a living. So I pay attention. When people smarter than me talk or release information, I tend to pay attention. And so far, ESPN has released these top 10 lists at the following positions. Quarterbacks came out today. They did running backs, defensive tackles, edge rushers, safeties, tight ends, interior offensive linemen, and offensive tackles. They'll release the top 10 linebackers, receivers, and cornerbacks during the week, as voted on by NFL executives, scouts, and coaches. Okay, and so far, through the lists that have been released, NFL executives, scouts, and coaches have only named 3 Colts players as being in the top 10 at their position. And I want to talk about all of them. You can probably guess who they are. Quentin Nelson was ranked the 3rd best interior offensive lineman in the NFL. It's not surprising. Okay, I know that people don't like that Chris Ballard spent the 6th overall pick on an offensive guard. Okay, but it could be worse. Chris Ballard could have spent the 6th overall pick on an offensive guard that sucks. He could have spent it on a terrible offensive guard. Instead, he drafted a guy in Quentin Nelson who's going to be a Hall of Famer. Okay, he has played at a high level for his entire career. It is no surprise whatsoever that he is ranked the 3rd best interior offensive lineman in the NFL. And he should once again be a high-level, high contributor for this Colts offense. Okay, he should not give up a ton of sacks. Okay, he should continue to be an offensive lineman that the Colts can line it up and run behind. Okay, like he's an offensive lineman that the Colts should line up and run Jonathan Taylor right behind him. And speaking of Jonathan Taylor, he was named the 5th best running back in the NFL. I don't get this one. Okay. Once again, these lists are voted on by executive scouts and coaches. I got to be honest, this was surprising. I was surprised to see Jonathan Taylor be named the 5th best running back in the NFL. I didn't think he'd even make the list. Okay, his 3rd year in the NFL 2 years ago wasn't very good. Okay, you can chalk it up to a bad offensive line year, but still, okay, the fifth best running back in the NFL would have scored more than 4 touchdowns in 11 games, even with an offensive line as atrocious as the Colts was 2 years ago. Then last year, he barely played. He missed a decent amount of games due to contract negotiations. Then he broke his thumb. Okay, I don't know how a player who was bad 2 years ago, then barely played last year, can be named the fifth best running back in the NFL, especially when players like Bijan Robinson of the Atlanta Falcons, who was arguably the best back in the NFL last year, are ranked behind him. Okay, Jonathan Taylor has had one good year. That's it. Jonathan Taylor is still living off of the year that he had 3 years ago, where he won AP Offensive Player of the Year. Okay, the year he made the All-Pro team. The only time in his career that he's made an All-Pro team. He was also selected to the Pro Bowl that year. The only year that he's made the Pro Bowl. He's had one good year. And like there are high expectations for him this season. And I don't get it. Like outside of that 1 year, 3 years ago, so it's not even like it was recent, he's been just another guy. He's been just another running back. Yes, he's capable of carrying the ball out of the backfield. Okay, but he doesn't impact the passing game that much. Okay, maybe that's why Shane Steichen didn't have him in for the biggest play of the season last year against the Texans, because he knew that they were going to throw that little swing pass, and he didn't have the faith in Jonathan Taylor to make the play. I don't know. That's probably not it, but still. I think this ranking is completely and totally based on something that happened 3 years ago. The expectations that I think Colts fans have for Jonathan Taylor is based on something that happened 3 years ago. And outside of that 1 year, he hadn't been very good. Like based on what we've seen from Jonathan Taylor going into his fifth season, one, he does not appear to be the fifth best running back in the NFL. And that one special year is looking more and more like a one-hit wonder. That's who Jonathan Taylor is right now. He's Billy Ray Cyrus. Okay, one good year. That's it. That's all that he's had. And outside of that, he's been pretty average, which I just don't think is deserving of being ranked the fifth best running back in the NFL. The final player whose name has popped up on these top 10 lists, DeForest Buckner, was named the 8th best defensive tackle in the NFL. Now, this is a guy who is anything but a one-hit wonder. DeForest Buckner, since 2018, has posted at least 7 sacks every season. One of those years, he posted 12.5 sacks. And he's been a good defender against the run, because you don't play defensive tackle in the NFL if you can't defend the run. So DeForest Buckner has been highly consistent, and he's been extremely available. That's my favorite thing about him. He has played 15 games or more every year of his career, right? And that consistency and constantly being available and making plays in both the pass game and run game earned him the eighth spot amongst defensive tackles voted on by NFL executive scouts and coaches. This makes sense, unlike that Jonathan Taylor being the fifth best running back in the NFL nonsense. And here's the thing. This, DeForest Buckner being allegedly the 8th best defensive tackle in the league makes sense, but it's not good enough. DeForest Buckner is a good player. Clearly, he's consistent. He's available when he's on the field. He makes plays. The issue is that he's the best defensive lineman that the Colts have. And that is simply not good enough to compete for Super Bowls. That's simply not good enough to win a playoff game. Okay, the teams that compete for Super Bowls have a stable of defensive linemen that can impact the game. Think San Francisco 49ers. The Colts don't have that. Okay? And then there are other teams, think Kansas City Chiefs, that have one dominant guy like Chris Jones. Think the Rams a couple years ago with Aaron Donald. Colts don't have that either. Okay, that is why everyone is interested in what rookie Laiatu Latu is going to give the Colts defensive line this year. That's why I personally like drafting Laiatu Latu, because the Colts need a second pass rusher. They need a second guy on the defensive line who can demand a double team and wreak some havoc on 3rd and 8. That's what they need. And that's why I'm excited about Laiatu Latu. That's why the Colts drafted him. The Colts need an edge rusher. The Colts don't have a top 10 edge rusher in the NFL. Meanwhile, two of their division opponents, the Texans and the Jaguars, both have top 10 edge rushers. Okay, Laiatu Latu needs to be good right away because the Colts are in desperate need of a second guy along the defensive line who can make a play. Okay, DeForest Buckner has the ability to dominate games in stretches, but he's not Chris Jones who can do it for an entire game. Okay, the Colts need a second defensive lineman to step up in the final 2 minutes of a game to help DeForest Buckner. He's going to continue to be solid. He just needs a little bit of help, and then we'll see his numbers go up even more. And look, let's be honest. If you had to guess the three Colts players that NFL executive scouts and coaches would have voted on to be in these lists as, regarded as top 10 at their position, you probably would have guessed them all right. Quentin Nelson, Jonathan Taylor, and DeForest Buckner. And this speaks to the lack of talent that Chris Ballard has acquired. The Colts only have 3 players on these lists so far. And based on the ones that haven't been released yet, I don't think that the Colts are going to add any more. Okay, Chris Ballard is going into his 8th year as the general manager of the Colts. And he's done a terrible job of acquiring talent, which is his job. Like that's his job. His goal is to acquire good players and have them put on the Colts uniform. That is his entire job. And he hasn't done it. He hasn't done it. Okay, and I don't care how he acquires the talent. I don't think anyone cares how he acquires the talent. Some general managers acquire talent through the draft. Chris Ballard hasn't done that. Okay, there's a plethora of guys who haven't panned out. Okay, you could really argue only 2, maybe 3 of them have. Jonathan Taylor, Quentin Nelson, Michael Pittman Jr., I guess, maybe. I don't know. Other general managers acquire talent through trade. Ballard hasn't really done that either. Sure, he traded for DeForest Buckner, but that's really about it. Okay, can you name any other great trades that have lifted this Colts roster up that Chris Ballard has made? I can't. And then the last way to acquire talent is free agency, which I don't think Chris Ballard even knows exists. 1 playoff win in the last 7 years under Chris Ballard. And, we rip on him for that, but it makes sense. Okay, there's just such a major lack of talent on the field for these Colts. Okay? Like some of these draft picks need to be hits this year, immediately. Like Laiatu Latu better be able to play immediately. Adonai Mitchell better be able to play immediately. Okay, like that's what he needs. Anthony Richardson better be awesome this year because every single offseason move that the Colts have made has been predicated on this idea that Anthony Richardson is going to be good right now. So he better be good this year because if he's not, the Colts are going to be bad. Okay, and I'm not talking like 9-8, 8-9. I'm talking like 4-13. If he isn't the guy that everybody in that Colts building thinks that he's going to be. Okay? These draft picks for Chris Ballard better hit soon. Okay, the bad news is that a lot of these Chris Ballard draft picks have not hit. A lot of these Chris Ballard draft picks have been, depth pieces. They're like second, third string guys. Think Alec Pierce. I don't know. The good news, though, if you want to be, a glass half full guy, the good news is that he's due for somebody to hit. Like if you take enough swipes at the apple, eventually, like you're going to hit it. And so you would think that he would be due, but I don't know. His track record, doesn't exactly comfort people when it comes to his ability to draft good players. So more of those lists will be released throughout the week. I doubt we're going to see any other Colts players pop up on the list, but hey, whatever. But if we were to list out the best players in the WNBA, Caitlin Clark would undoubtedly be on that list, especially with her play as of late. I'm talking about her when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Welcome back to The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. That's right. Your boy is back after just a great week of vacation. Glad to be back. Glad I got to go on vacation. It was nice. But because I got to go on vacation, I missed out on just some important sports conversation, especially around our girl, Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever. They just continue to get better. It's impressive. They show up night in, night out. They compete. Caitlin Clark has gone to a whole different level. Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell have both upped their game. That in part because Caitlin Clark has gone to this whole new level, and they are legitimately fun to watch. The Fever just wrapped up a tough 5-game stretch where they played the Las Vegas Aces, who are currently third in the WNBA standings, the New York Liberty, who are currently first in the WNBA standings, the Mystic, who suck, the Mercury, who are sixth in the WNBA standings, and the Minnesota Lynx, they played them yesterday, who are fourth in the WNBA standings. That is a tough stretch of games. Coming into the season, looking at that stretch, you've been like, if they go 1-4, if they can beat the Mystic, that'd be great. And then you sit back and you watch them, and you just kind of see this upward trajectory to a point where they went 3-2, a winning record over a tough stretch. Angel Reese and the Chicago Sky, they're not doing that. Okay, they went 3-2 over that tough 5-game stretch. That is impressive. There is no way they would have gone 3-2 over that stretch a month ago. Okay, part of why they've improved is because Caitlin Clark has improved. These last 5 games, she's been awesome. The turnovers still a little bit too high. Okay, I want to make sure that we're talking about the full picture here. Turnovers, still a bit much for me. But over these last 5 games, outside of that, man, she's been awesome. Okay, over this tough stretch against some of the best teams in the WNBA, she logged her first triple-double against the New York Liberty. That happened about a week ago. And she averaged 19.5 points, 11 assists, and 6.5 rebounds a game. Those are great numbers for anyone, yet alone a rookie, against some of the best teams in the WNBA. She's averaged a double-double against, this tough stretch of teams that are dominating the WNBA currently. Okay, like she is starting to figure things out, especially in how teams are guarding her. And it's leading to a slight uptick in the scoring, right, which is impressive, and it's nice to see. She went crazy against the Mystic and scored, 29 points, hit a whole bunch of threes. It was great. It was fun. It was entertaining. But what's really popping is the uptick in the number of assists that she's having. Okay, like with where the double teams are coming from and all these things, like it's leading to her having so many more assists. And because of that, Aaliyah Boston is an all-star. Because of this uptick in assists, Kelsey Mitchell is an all-star. Both Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell have both put up great numbers over, the past month or so. Okay, Kelsey Mitchell averaged 20 points a game in that tough 5-game stretch against some of the best teams in the WNBA. Aaliyah Boston averaged a double-double. She dominated yesterday. It's like 17 points and 16 rebounds. Jeez. Okay, over this tough 5-game stretch, she averaged 16 points and 11 rebounds a game. The Fever's 3 best players, all of their averages went up during that 5-game stretch compared to their normal averages. And this is a sign of multiple things. It's a sign of young players just getting better, right? Like we have to remember, Caitlin Clark, as great as she is, she's only a rookie, and she's starting to figure things out. Aaliyah Boston, great player. It's only her 2nd year in the league. Kelsey Mitchell, another great player. It's only her 3rd year in the league. Okay, so we are not only seeing them get better and improve, but we're also seeing them learn how to play together. Okay, we are. And it's fun to watch. Like there's a lot more camaraderie. There's a lot more connection. Seeing watching the press conferences afterwards, like you can tell that people both like, or the women on the team both like and support Caitlin Clark, which is important. Okay, and like they should, like part of why Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston are all-stars is because people are tuning in to watch Caitlin Clark, and so they're also getting to see more Kelsey Mitchell and more Aaliyah Boston, which is leading to them getting more all-star votes and these different types of things, right? So, like, there's camaraderie. They're learning how to play together on the court. They all seem to get along off the court. And over this past month, it has really popped. The best records in the WNBA since June 13th are the Las Vegas Aces, who are the defending champs, who are finally healthy. They've gone 11-2 over the past month. The New York Liberty, the runner-ups from last year, and the number one team in the WNBA this year, they're 9-2 in the last month. And then the third best record over the past month belongs to the Indiana Fever at 8-4. The Fever are getting better, and their three best players are improving. And NaLyssa Smith is an awesome fourth best player to have. And when Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell all show up and they all contribute and they all play well, Fever are tough to beat. That's three good, young, talented players. And all three of them played great yesterday in a road win. Road win. Road wins aren't easy to get, especially when you have a young team. But before I continue on, I want to address Christy Sides. Look, bad coaching gets in the way of things. It does. And bad coaching gets in the way. I think good coaching just allows great players to be great. I think very rarely, especially in a game as individualized as basketball, I think it's very rare to see a coach truly uplift everybody. It's an extreme rarity. And so in basketball, bad coaches get in the way of things and good coaches allow great players to be great. Christy Sides has been under a microscope all year long because she's the coach of the most popular women's basketball player ever. I said most popular, not best. And so she's been under this incredible microscope, and these people, including me, who've never really watched the WNBA, people who don't really understand how the WNBA is played, they're coming in, they're going on Twitter, they're going, wherever they have their imaginary platform, and they're sending out into the void all these, insults to Christy Sides and how terrible of a coach she is. But here's the thing. She's a good coach. She has done a good job of bringing this team along. Has she made some mistakes? Sure. No doubt about it. But what coach doesn't make mistakes? The great Coach Knight made mistakes. Especially, I'm sure he did, especially at Army when he was a young, new, first-time head coach. Like, this is Christy Sides' first head coaching job. And she's, had this awesome, intriguing player just kind of thrust upon her. And it's like, figure this out or people are going to get really mad at you. And I think she's handled it well. I think a large part of why the Fever are 8-4 over, the last month isn't just because Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell have been awesome offensively, but this team has figured out how to defend. And listening to Lynn Dunn, who comes on this station every Friday at 1 o'clock on the Dan Dockett Show, which is available from noon to 3, she is stressed that Christy Sides is a defensive-minded head coach. And we are seeing that. Okay, we are seeing the improvement that this Indiana Fever team has had on the defensive side of the ball, which is important because you don't go on the road to play against the Minnesota Lynx, who are one of the four best teams in the WNBA. You don't go on the road and win that game unless you can get stops. You don't go 8-4 over a month-long stretch unless you can figure out a way to get stops. Now, the great part is because of Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell's offensive abilities, you don't have to get a ton of stops. You have to get just enough of them. And they do. Okay, like, this is an impressive team that can really, score, not at will, but they score pretty easily with Caitlin Clark's playmaking ability, Aaliyah Boston's ability to score inside, and Kelsey Mitchell's speed and shooting ability. The question has been defensively, like, what are they going to do? And Christy Sides has found a way to get these women to buy in on the defensive side of the ball. She's made some lineup adjustments. We're seeing a lot more Lexi Hull and Katie Lou Samuelson. I believe I'm saying her name right. So, like, they're good. And part of that isn't just because Caitlin Clark's amazing, but it's also in part to how good of a job Christy Sides has done. She hasn't been perfect, but she has done a good job coaching this team. I thought it was evident yesterday. Clark, Mitchell, and Boston, all three showed up and played well. Aaliyah Boston was dominant on the inside, 17 points and 16 rebounds, just dominating the glass, showing great hands. Like she's catching, more passes from Caitlin Clark that she would have missed earlier in the season. I think that's another reason we're seeing this uptick in assists from Caitlin Clark. Her teammates are they're actually catching the ball now. They're ready for these passes. And that leads to Aaliyah Boston scoring 17 points. She was awesome. Kelsey Mitchell led the Fever in scoring, 21 points. Okay, like that girl, she can score. Okay, she may not be the best passer. She can defend too. She had a important block late in that game yesterday, right? But she didn't pass the ball super great. She didn't rebound super great. But hey, she defends and she puts the ball in the bucket. I'll take every player that I can get like that. And then finally, Caitlin Clark, 17 points and 6 assists. But she just creates so much offense with the way that these teams are defending her. She's such a good passer. Like she had multiple hockey assists. Like she's really figuring things out. And once again, when all three of these women play well, Fever are tough to beat. Okay? And the last thing I want to address before I had to break is just some of the discourse that I saw while I was gone surrounding Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. Angel Reese's 15-game double-double streak to me was both impressive and annoying. Okay, like to rebound as well as she has as a rookie is impressive. Okay, she's playing against full-grown women and rookies in any sport, the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, whatever. Rookies in any sport usually come in lacking strength, right? Because you're 21, 22 years old playing against 28, 29-year-olds, people in their, their peak, their physical prime, kind of those late 20s. And so seeing her, Angel Reese, come in and rebound at this level is impressive. It is. The annoying part, however, is the stat padding. Okay, like I don't know if you guys have seen it, but there's a clip, circling around Twitter of, the Chicago Sky are getting thumped by the Liberty. They're down by like 15. And they throw the ball to Angel Reese, who has like 8 points and like 10 rebounds. And there's like 20 seconds left in the game. And Angel Reese catches it. Ooh, bless you. Anyway, Angel Reese catches it. She goes to score, and the Liberty quadruple team her. Okay, like it was the most blatant stat padding thing I've ever seen. And that was where her 15-game double-double streak came to an end. Okay, and that's the annoying part. It's like the stat padding and the missed layups. Like she's terrible around the basket. She's awful. Okay, if she was average, then she would have a legit case to be the rookie of the year. Okay, she would. But she can't make a layup. Yet, people are citing her, and this double-double streak is evidence as to why she should be the rookie of the year. And the people who are doing that are simply just Caitlin Clark haters. Okay, Dawn Staley, the head coach of the South Carolina Gamecocks, the best program in women's basketball, came out and said that she would give Angel Reese the Rookie of the Year award like today, which is just absurd. Okay, like there are people out there, it's becoming easier and easier to identify the Caitlin Clark haters out there. And it's a lot of people that Caitlin Clark is beaten. Yeah, I think my favorite part of the Fever's win yesterday is, Caitlin Clark gets fouled and she's running to the free throw line, and let's be honest, every game that the Fever plays is a home game because everyone's there to watch Caitlin Clark. So they're on the road. The Fever are up by 2. Caitlin Clark's going to the free throw line. She just got intentionally fouled, and she's pumping up the crowd, and she's clapping her hands, and she's doing all of this while staring down the Minnesota Lynx' head coach, who said that she didn't give a bleep about Caitlin Clark. Okay. Also, the Minnesota Lynx head coach also is the head coach of the Olympic team. Right. So there's some, I wouldn't call it animosity, but like there's like this chip on Caitlin Clark's shoulder, and it's so much fun to watch, and it makes it all the more interesting. It does. Okay. And something else I've really enjoyed watching that, I do my best when I go on vacation to not just like watch sports all the time, right? Not only, it just kind of gives me a break, but it also gives my wife a break, who kind of has to watch everything with me, even though she doesn't really want to. God bless her. She's amazing. Love my wife. And so I found myself like trying not to watch sports, but also like kind of doing it anyway. So I tuned in to a lot of the summer league. It's something I just really enjoy watching. Watched a lot of the Pacers. Jarris Walker, not a bust. That dude can play. That dude can ball. Getting into him. I'm going to talk about him here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in. Maybe you're listening live on that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download on the App Store or the Google Play Store. Maybe you're listening in the car, 14:30 a.m. The old-fashioned way. I like it. I respect it. I have a great appreciation for doing things the old-fashioned way. Maybe you're watching on YouTube. Head over there, Indy Sports Ticket. Subscribe. Join the chat. Give me your thoughts on everything that I'm saying. Maybe you're watching us live on Twitter. Usually we broadcast that from Ticket 1430, but we were having some issues getting up and going there. So instead, we're broadcasting from my personal account, _ Jonathan Smith. So head over there, watch the live stream if you just want to listen to greatness for the next little bit. Now, speaking of greatness, I want to talk about Jarace Walker. This kid's not a bust. I like this kid's game. Jarace Walker, not a bust so far through 2 Summer League games, which I know is just a huge sample size. I think the kid looks good, man. Like, he's a big wing. He could clearly impact the game in multiple ways. And I think we've seen that so far in the Summer League. Like he has really impacted the game just with his size and his length and how athletic he is and how skilled he is on the offensive side of the ball. And the Pacers have come out, Chad Buchanan, Rick Carlisle, they've come out and said that when they drafted Jarace Walker, they drafted him thinking that he was going to play power forward. I remember talking to Tony East about this 2 weeks ago, and they have decided, because Obi Toppin's been good and because they went out and they drafted Pascal Siakam, they have decided that Jarace Walker is no longer going to play power forward, but instead he's going to play small forward. And there are some advantages to that. There are some disadvantages to that. And look, he's a big small forward, but he looks capable of playing the position. Like, he's clearly athletic, clearly explosive, all those things. And one of the advantages of playing him at small forward is that he's bigger. Because he's bigger, he rebounds well, and that, bigger teams tend to just defend better. They just do. And like I said, he's rebounded well in these first 2 Summer League games, 6 rebounds against the Nets, 8 more against the Timberwolves last night. He can score the ball as well. He had 25 points against the Nets on 50% shooting. Okay. And I was watching that game and I was just really impressed, like the way that he cut and slashed to the basket. He's really big. Like Dan has called him fat on his show. I don't think he's fat. I think he's just a naturally big kid. And, his size and his length really allowed him to finish well around the rim against the Nets. Once again, 25 points on 50% shooting. And I watched that game. I was kind of concerned. Like, he was 0 of 3 from 3. He didn't take a ton of them. I thought that there were some catch and shoot opportunities that he kind of passed up on. I was like, has the jump shot not really developed? Like, I know he shot 38% from 3 when he was playing with the Pacers, but once again, small sample size. And so I was like, maybe he's just not going to shoot the ball well enough again this year. Then last night, I'm watching him play against the Timberwolves, and he shot 5 of 11 from 3. And those are the only points he scored. He scored 15 points on 5 of 11 shooting from downtown. And the stats say 5 of 11 is really more 5 of 10. He took like a 35-footer with like 7 seconds left on the game clock to end the game. So on like real legitimate 3-point shots, he was more like 5 of 10. And so I was like, maybe this kid can shoot it a little bit. And he's got this really nice kind of turnaround jumper from like the elbow area. Like the kid he's good offensively. Like, he's a willing and capable passer as well. Like, he had 4 assists against the Nets, 4 against the Timberwolves. Like, the vision and the playmaking is there. And, they were talking on the broadcast. He played point guard in high school. Like, he can handle the basketball. He's a good, capable passer. He has good vision. Like, there are just plenty of benefits from playing point guard, at a high level. He went to a big time prep school, IMG Academy. And so like he's got some experience handling the ball and being the primary decision maker. And you can see that. Like, he has shown through these 2 Summer League games that he can do a bit of everything on the offensive end of the floor, which is nice because, like, this is a Pacers offense where you better be able to pass and you better be able to shoot at a minimum. Okay, that's what Ben Shepherd did, and he got plenty of minutes, right? So, like the Jarace Walker appears to be a guy who can fit in this Rick Carlisle offense. But the big thing, though, And the reason why I want him to emerge and be a legit rotation player for the Pacers is because of the upside on the defensive side of the ball. Like, he has defended well through 2 games. Carlisle was interviewed during the first game against the Nets, and he mentioned how bigger teams just defend better. And that's part of why they like playing Jarris Walker at the small forward spot as opposed to the power forward spot. And he's bigger than everybody he's defended. And it's had a real impact. Like, he has just swallowed some good players up on some possessions. Like, he did it to Terrence Shannon Jr. last night, right? And like he's done a good job of staying in front of the ball. I think that's the concern when you play a bigger guy at a smaller position. Does he have the lateral quickness to stay in front of the ball? Jarris Walker seems like he does. And it's been fun to watch. Like, every time he has the ball, I perk up a bit because I've been pretty vocal about how I think Jarris Walker is a good basketball player and how he's going to help this Pacers team at some point. And I think it's going to be next year. Okay, he didn't play a lot for the Pacers last year because they had a lot of good players, right? And that's led to fans and people not really believing him, raising questions like, is the kid going to be good? Is he going to be a bust? All those different types of things. And the answer is no. Like, he didn't play because the Pacers were good. That's fine. Especially at the power 4 spot when Pascal Siakam came over. Okay, like, Jarris Walker, once again, small sample size watching 2 summer league games, but he appears to be a rotational player for the Pacers this next season. Like, he clearly has a good feel with the ball in his hands, and he can defend. Okay, like, I like the dude. He's a good player, and I am excited to see him play in a real Pacers uniform this next season. Okay, now the other draft pick that I think people are interested in watching for the Indiana Pacers was the 35th overall pick in this year's draft, Johnny Furphy out of Kansas. And I watched him play against the Nets, didn't notice him a ton. Went back, looked at the numbers, he looked fine. I mean, ultimately, I felt like he was uncomfortable in that first game against the Nets. He went 4 of 11 from the floor, 3 of 8 from 3, which isn't bad. For 12 points, which is fine. A lot of his offense was off the catch and shoot, or someone would throw him a grenade late in the shot clock. That's kind of what happened against the Nets. And then he looked much better yesterday against the Timberwolves, despite only shooting 2 of 8 from 3, right? Like, he's been labeled 3 and D. He's like 6'7". He's got really long arms. He's rebounded well. I'm going to talk about that here in a second. That's kind of what he's been labeled as. But I thought he played better yesterday despite only shooting 2 of 8 from 3 because he led the Pacers in scoring with 18 points. He's got a lot of Ben Shepherd to him, like, catches the ball. If it's not there, he's going to move it, and then he's going to move. Okay, like that's my favorite thing about players. Guys who can play without the basketball, right? Because there's only one, and so, like, only one guy can have it, and the other 4 guys have to figure out ways to get open and score through movement. But I think that's part of why I really liked Ben Shepherd coming out of Belmont. Like, we saw the exact same thing. A guy who knows how to play without the basketball. And Johnny Furphy showed a lot of that yesterday. And it wasn't just him, like, running off of screens, catch and shoot threes and things like that. Like, he cut to the basket for multiple dunks, which gave him the space to get off 8 threes. He also grabbed 7 rebounds, which obviously that's a positive thing as well. He's tall. He's long. He can clearly shoot the ball. He needs to put some weight on. He's like 140 pounds at 6'7". Like, the dude's he's tiny, man. But at the same time, he's only 19 years old, right? And so I thought that what we saw from Johnny Furphy yesterday was good. I thought it was encouraging for, what his future could be. I think he's still going to spend the majority of his time this year in the G League, working on, his game, trying to put size on and all those things. The other player, though, for the Pacers that really pops when you watch the Summer League team is Oscar Tshiebwe. I wish he was like 3 inches taller. Because he's awesome. I love Oscar Tshiebwe. Okay, he drove me crazy at Kentucky because they'd play Arkansas and he'd grab, 30 rebounds, and you're just like, all right, man, whatever. This is frustrating. He's listed at 6'9", but he looks more like he's 6'6". Like, I think he's shorter than Jarris Walker. But it doesn't matter because Oscar Tshiebwe grabs every single rebound. He plays incredibly hard. but he's, he can't make a layup. Like, he'll grab an offensive rebound and then he'll smoke the layup, and then he'll grab another offensive rebound and then he'll pass it out. It's like, if I didn't know any better, I'd call him the Angel Reese of the NBA. Like, I've seen him miss so many layups over these first two games. Like, against the Nets, he missed several, and he was 1 of 5 from the floor against the Timberwolves. But, like, I love his energy. I love how hard he plays. I just wish he was, a legit 6'9", because if he was a legit 6'9", like, he could play at the NBA level, right? But, he doesn't have the size. He doesn't finish well enough around the basket. But, man, like, if every NBA player played like Oscar Tshiebwe every single game, the product would be a million times better. He plays so incredibly hard every single possession, and it's easy to like players that do that. Like, even, like, not even just in the NBA, like in every sport. Like, it's fun to watch, hitters that are locked in and they aren't giving away at bats. Like, if you've watched and played enough baseball, you can sit back, you can watch, and you can be like, okay, that guy was clearly not laser focused in that at bat. Like, you can just tell by the way that it transpired. If you want to watch guys give away at bats, go watch the White Sox. Okay, if you want to see what a guy looks like when he's locked into every single pitch, go watch the Orioles and tune in to Gunnar Henderson, who's at 28 home runs before the All-Star break. And it's the same thing with Oscar Tshiebwe. He doesn't give possessions away. He's crashing the glass hard. He's always engaged defensively. And it's fun to watch. He's an easy guy to root for. And I really hope that, it probably won't be with the Pacers because they have a million power forwards. But there's a team out there who could use a guy like Oscar Tshiebwe. And I hope someone picks him up and he gets a chance to play in the league, because he's fun to watch, plays hard, he's a good teammate, he does his job, and guys like that deserve at least an opportunity. So, just bouncing around the rest of the summer league stuff. Cocaine Curry's here. And if you're like, Jonathan, who is Cocaine Curry? Cocaine Curry is Reed Sheppard. Okay, I watched or said before the draft that Reed Sheppard was the best player in the draft. And he was awesome against the Lakers over the weekend. He scored 23 points on 9 of 17 shooting, 4 of 6 from 3. He absolutely torched Bronny James repeatedly. He also had 5 assists. Then last night, he played the Washington Wizards, who had the number 2 overall pick, and took Alex Sarr, the Frenchman, and he torched the Wizards. 22 points, 9 of 15 shooting, 7 assists. Meanwhile, Alex Sarr, the number 2 overall pick, had a measly 6 points and 3 rebounds. That's it. It's like, geez, Wizards, I think you guys might have made a mistake. Reed Sheppard, an absolute bucket. And I know on Dan's show, my show, we talked a little bit about nicknames and how, like, a lot of them are just people's, like, initials, like Anthony Edwards is Ant, right? Anthony Richardson is AR, so on and so forth. Cocaine Curry it's got to be one of the best nicknames going right now. That's an awesome nickname for a guy like Reed Sheppard, who can absolutely shoot it. And then I also want to address Bronny James. Because, his game sold out, and, like, none of the other games did when it comes to the Summer League stuff. And after Reed Sheppard torched Bronny James on Friday, there was quite the discussion, on Twitter and social media platforms, and, tuning into different talk shows. Like, there was quite the discussion about how Bronny James couldn't guard Reed Sheppard, and how he didn't look very good defensively, and how he only shot like 3 of 14 from the field, and he didn't really score, and all these things. Here's the thing. The 3rd overall pick should torch the 55th overall pick. If Reed Sheppard hadn't torched Bronny, there would have been concern about Reed Sheppard going forward. Okay? Like in what world is the 55th overall pick supposed to be better than the 3rd overall pick? There isn't a world that exists where that's the case. Okay, whoever's taken 55th overall, think Isaiah Wong for the Pacers last year. The 55th pick is always considered a player that's going to need some work. Okay, Bronny James, no different. Okay, like, there's not only going to be an adjustment period for Bronny James, but there's also going to be a development period, because he's just not good enough to play in the NBA yet. Okay, he's not. He didn't get to play much at USC because he was coming off the heart attack. In some ways, he's basically making a leap from high school to the NBA. Okay, like there's going to be these moments where he's bad. Okay, like he should spend a lot of time in the G League next year for the Lakers. That's where he belongs. Like almost every second round pick does their rookie year. Okay, like Bronny James is going to be fine. Okay, like he's got to develop, he's got to adjust to the pace of the game and all those things, but he's going to be fine. People, torching him and ripping on him because he couldn't guard the number 3 overall pick. Like, come on now, it's not that deep. But more stuff coming your way in the second hour. I want to talk football, so I'm going to talk football. Okay, Colts, Chris Ballard sucks. We all know that. I'm going to tell you why when we come back here in about 5 minutes. What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. So good to be back. I love this job. Love this place. Love this station. Speaking of the station, I can't believe I didn't mention this in the first hour. I feel bad. Dan Dockett's show not airing today for a great reason. He has his annual golf outing today, raising money to buy bikes for kids that can't really afford them. So great cause. So he's off the air today. I believe he's off the air tomorrow as well. But he's out there. He's doing just great things for kids, which is awesome. So he's doing that. Meanwhile, I'm over here just juiced up and ready to go for football, man. 44 days until the start of the college football season. 52 days until the start of the NFL season, and I can't wait. Top it all off, 0 more days until the release of College Football 25. For me, at least, I paid extra money because I couldn't wait to get my hands on it. I'm going to go home today. I'm going to hang out with my wife for as long as I can. But then 4 o'clock sharp, when the game is officially available, I will be in front of the TV for way too long. So, yeah, that comes out today. I'm pumped. I'm excited for that. IU football, Purdue football. This is still something that I'm trying to figure out. So if you can let me know, tweet at me at _ Jonathan Smith. Drop a comment if you're watching on YouTube. What is the expectation that IU and Purdue fans have for football success? Like what is considered a successful season? So for me, being an Arkansas fan, growing up in Arkansas, if they won 8 or 9 games, didn't matter the year, but okay, that's a good year. I can live with that. Right. And then from there, once every, 4 or 5 years, you would have just, an outstandingly good recruiting class. Right. And you're okay, maybe this is a year where we can win 10 games. Right. That's kind of how it always was for me growing up with Arkansas. What is kind of that feeling with IU and Purdue? Because let's be honest, historically, they're both bad. Okay. I feel like if they can just find a way to win 7 games, go 6-6, win the bowl game, that's kind of what I think when I just look at the history of it. So I'm asking IU and Purdue fans, what would you consider a successful football season for both IU and Purdue? I know IU has an easy schedule. Purdue's is a little bit tougher because they're in the same side of the Big Ten as, Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan. So that's kind of brutal. But there are some winnable games out there for Purdue. So I feel like making a bowl game would be a successful season for both teams. Winning that game, obviously, being important as well. So once again, tweet at me, answer that question for me. That way, in the fall, I'm covering it the way that I need to and the way that you guys want me to. What is a successful season for IU and Purdue football? With that being said, I want to move over to the Colts, where a successful season is making the playoffs. Okay, we are 52 days away from the first NFL game of the year. Chiefs, Ravens, Thursday Night Football, September 5th, marked off on the calendar. Can't wait for it. Okay, I love sports. Okay, I've been doing this show from 10 to noon almost every day during the best part of the college basketball season. Okay, you missed me late nights, 9 to 10 p.m. where I was covering, the NFL playoffs, having an absolute blast. Okay, so a lot of you guys missed that. And so you guys haven't really heard me cover football yet. Meanwhile, you've heard me extensively talk about the NBA. I talked about the Summer League, 20 minutes ago. I'll probably bring it back up again here at some point. You've heard me discuss the WNBA and Caitlin Clark. Going to talk about her in 15 minutes. And I have thoroughly enjoyed discussing all the basketball that's been going on for the past few months, from March Madness to IU to Purdue's awesome run to the NBA to the Pacers run to the Eastern Conference Finals. I've had a blast. And I think it's no secret that I love basketball. But I am so ready for football. So ready for it. Was raised on it from the South. Okay, football courses through my veins every single day. Okay? And as much as I love basketball, I love football probably more. I'm ready for my football weekends where I sit in front of the television for hours on end with a big pot of chili, just eating great food, watching games. I remember when I was in college, we would all gather around my tiny TV. We would order barbecue and we would eat food and we would watch the games. And it was great. Football brings people together and it's an awesome thing. And we are 52 days away from that awesome experience. And because of that, that means that these, ESPN basically sends out these surveys every year to executives, coaches, and scouts in the NFL. And then ESPN takes these surveys, which are basically like rank the top 10 players at all these different positions. And then ESPN takes the averages and they put out a list based on what these scouts, coaches, and executives are saying. And because of this, like, I pay attention to this stuff every single year. Okay. Like, it's one of the few times we get to hear directly from the people that do this for a living. So I pay attention to it. And, you could argue like, are these GMs and stuff, like, are they really taking this seriously? Is there some bias and stuff? I don't know. Probably. But even with their bias, they know way more than you or I do. Right. So I like to pay attention to it. And so far, ESPN has released some of, not all of the lists. So there are 11 lists that they're doing. Here are the ones that they've released in terms of top 10 players at the following positions. They released quarterbacks today, running backs, defensive tackles, edge rushers, safeties, tight ends, interior offensive linemen, and offensive tackles. In the coming days, they will release their top 10 linebackers list, receivers, and cornerbacks. Right? Once again, all of this voted on by NFL executives, scouts, and coaches. Okay, and so far, only 3 Colts players have been named to any of these top 10 position lists. And you can probably guess who they are. You can also probably guess that this is disappointing. You'd think that when a general manager has been somewhere for 7 years, he would acquire a little bit more talent than what Chris Ballard has. But let's look at the talent that he has acquired. Quentin Nelson was ranked the 3rd best interior offensive lineman in the NFL, according to executive scouts and coaches. This isn't surprising at all. Okay, I know that people don't like that Chris Ballard spent the 6th overall pick on an offensive guards, but it could be worse. It really could be. Chris Ballard could have spent the 6th overall pick on an offensive guard that sucks. He could have. Like that was a very possible outcome, especially when you look at Chris Ballard's draft history. Instead, he drafted Quentin Nelson, who's going to be a Hall of Famer. Okay, he's played at a high level for his entire career, and he 1,000% deserves to be on this list. Okay, he does. And there's no reason that I can find, at least, that he shouldn't continue to be one of the best interior offensive linemen in football this year. Okay, he should once again be a player that doesn't give up many sacks, and he should continue to be an offensive lineman that the Colts can line up and run Jonathan Taylor right behind him successfully. Okay, if the Colts decide to run Anthony Richardson this year, it better be behind Quentin Nelson, right? Because he's one of the best interior, that's guards and centers, one of the best interior offensive linemen in the NFL. Okay, Jonathan Taylor was named the 5th best running back, which feels high. It does. I was kind of surprised that he was even on the list. Once again, this running back top 10 ranking brought to you by NFL executive scouts and coaches. This was surprising. It was. I didn't think he'd even be on the list. Right? Like when I'm reading through all of them, I was like, oh, there's going to be two Colts on here. One of them is going to be Quentin Nelson. The other one is going to be DeForest Buckner, who was named the 8th best defensive tackle, who I'll talk about here in a couple minutes. But Jonathan Taylor, I didn't expect to be ranked amongst the 10 best running backs in the league, because there are a lot of good running backs, and Jonathan Taylor hasn't been good these last 2 years. Okay, his 3rd year in the NFL, 2 years ago, wasn't good. Okay, and you can talk about how bad the offensive line was. You can talk about how the lack of quarterback play allowed defenses to stack the box, all these different things. Okay, but I saw Bijan Robinson last year be awesome as a rookie in Atlanta with an awful starting quarterback and a not good offensive line. Okay, so that I'm not taking these excuses. Okay, like that year 2 years ago was horrendous. The 5th best running back in the NFL would have scored more than four touchdowns in 11 games. At least that's what I would have thought, even if the offensive line was as atrocious as the Colts was that year 2 years ago. Then we get to last year, where he barely played. Okay, he had a career low in carries because he missed a lot of time, part of that due to a contract negotiation. And then when he finally did come out and play, what happened? He broke his thumb. Okay, and I don't know how a player who was as bad 2 years ago as he was, then the same guy barely plays the following year. I just don't know how that guy can be named the 5th best running back in the NFL. I don't know how that guy can be named a top 10 running back in the NFL. Okay, especially when players like Bijan Robinson and Josh Jacobs are ranked behind him. Okay, like let's be brutally honest about Jonathan Taylor here for a second. He's had one outstanding year. That's it. Okay, and his entire reputation is based off of a season he had 3 years ago. Okay, he is. Right? 3 years ago, he won AP Offensive Player of the Year. 3 years ago, he was voted to the All-Pro team. 3 years ago, he was selected to the Pro Bowl team. That is the only year that he made the Pro Bowl team. And that is the only year he was voted as an All-Pro, which is much more of an honor than making the Pro Bowl team. Okay, like outside of that 1 year that he had 3 years ago, okay, he's just been another running back. He's been just another guy, right? He's capable. He's good at carrying the ball out of the backfield like every other running back in the NFL. He doesn't impact the passing game very much like guys like Austin Eckler and Christian McCaffrey. Maybe that's why Shane Steichen elected to take him off the field for the biggest play of the season last year against the Texans. Like maybe that's why. Maybe Shane Steichen just didn't have the faith in him to catch the ball. Jonathan Taylor being ranked the 5th best running back in the NFL by executive scouts and coaches is surprising, and it's simply ridiculous. Okay, it's all based off of something that happened 3 years ago. And look, I hope they're right. I know Colts fans hope that they're right. But based on what we've seen from Jonathan Taylor going into his 5th season, is that 1 year that happened 3 years ago is looking more and more like a one-hit wonder. Okay? Like he's been fine outside of that. He's been average, which is okay because you don't need a great running back to win games in the NFL. Okay, you don't need one. You can have a great running back and lose a lot of games in the NFL. Look at the Colts 2 years ago. Okay? It's ridiculous. Look, I hope I'm wrong on Jonathan Taylor, but so far through his career, he's just living off of something that happened 3 years ago. Moving on to DeForest Buckner, who was named the 8th best defensive tackle in the NFL. This one makes sense to me. DeForest Buckner, unlike Jonathan Taylor, is not a one-hit wonder. DeForest Buckner, since 2018, has been the definition of consistent. At least 7 sacks every year. He had 1 year where he had 12.5 sacks. He's been a good defender against the run. You don't play defensive tackle in the NFL if you can't defend the run. Okay, he's been consistent in both the pass game and the run game, and more importantly, in his availability. He has played in 15 games or more every year of his career. Okay, and because of that and his consistency in his production, that has earned him the 8th ranking amongst defensive tackles voted on by NFL executive scouts and coaches. This makes sense. Okay, I like DeForest Buckner. He's a good player, but it's not good enough. DeForest Buckner, once again, is clearly a good player, has been for his entire career. The issue is he's the best defensive lineman that the Colts have. Okay, and if DeForest Buckner, as good of a player as he is, if he's your best defensive lineman, that's not good enough to compete for Super Bowls. It's not. The teams that compete for Super Bowls have one of two things on their defensive line. One, they have an absolute stable of defensive linemen that can impact the game. Think San Francisco 49ers. They've got 3, 4, 5 guys who can get in a stance and go get after the quarterback. The Colts don't have that. They've got DeForest Buckner and maybe Laiatu Latu. And then the other side of the spectrum is, the Rams 3 years ago when they won the Super Bowl, or the Chiefs now, Chris Jones, Aaron Donald, one dominant, overwhelmingly awesome defensive lineman who lifts everybody else up. The Colts don't have that either. Okay, I think that is why everyone is interested in and excited for what rookie Laiatu Latu is going to give the Colts on the defensive line this year. The Colts are in desperate need of just another guy on the defensive line who demands the offense's attention. Okay, that is what they need. The Colts don't have a top 10 edge rusher in the NFL. The Colts don't have a top 20 edge rusher in the NFL. Meanwhile, two of their division opponents, the Jags and the Texans, do have a top 10 edge rusher, according to NFL scouts, GMs, and coaches. Okay, Laiatu Latu needs to be good right away for the Colts to have a chance to make the playoffs because DeForest Buckner is a good player. He has the ability to dominate games over certain stretches, but he's not Chris Jones, who can do it for an entire game. Okay, the Colts need a second defensive lineman who can step up in the final 2 minutes of a game, a guy who can step up and win a one-on-one when it's 3rd and 8. Okay, like DeForest Buckner needs some help, right? And he's going to continue to be solid, but he needs some help, and hopefully that comes in the form of Laiatu Latu, right? And I'm running through all this, and I'm highlighting these 3 players to make this point that the Colts only having 3 players on these lists isn't a good sign. It's not okay. Okay, like if you had to guess the 3 players that the Colts would have on these lists, being voted at top 10 at their positions by NFL executive scouts and coaches, you probably would have guessed all of them right. You would have guessed Quentin Nelson, Jonathan Taylor, and DeForest Buckner. And you would have been right. Yay, good job. But here's the thing. It's year 7 for Chris Ballard. And he's only got 3 guys on these lists. Like, he's going into year 8 as the general manager of the Colts. And he's done a terrible job of acquiring talent. And that's kind of his job. His job is to go out and acquire talent. And he hasn't done that. And the frustrating thing is, he seems to care how he does it. Meanwhile, everyone else couldn't care less. I don't care about how he acquires talent. I don't think you do either. Okay, some general managers acquire talent through the draft. Chris Ballard hasn't done that. Some other general managers acquire talent through trades, which Chris Ballard hasn't really done that either. Yes, he made the trade for DeForest Buckner. But that's really it. Can you name another, roster-changing trade that Chris Ballard has made? I can't. I don't think that you can either. And then the only other way to acquire talent is through free agency, which Chris Ballard doesn't believe in. Okay, I don't even think that Chris Ballard knows that free agency exists. Okay, one playoff win in the last 7 years under Chris Ballard. And let's be honest, it makes sense. It makes sense that the Colts have only won one playoff game under Chris Ballard because he's done a terrible job of acquiring talent. When you sit back and you watch these Colts games, it is so apparent that they lack talent. Okay? And in order for Chris Ballard to keep his job, in order for this Colts team to potentially make the playoffs, guess what has to happen? Some of these rookies, some of these younger draft picks of Chris Ballard have to hit this year. Okay? And the bad news is that most of his draft picks haven't been very good. But the good news is that he's due, I guess. That's how you want to look at it. If you want that glass half full perspective heading into NFL training camp, which should start, I believe, this week. So Chris Ballard has to do a better job. He's got to get talent in and develop it, something he hasn't done really at all over the course of his 7 years going into his 8th year as the Colts general manager. Meanwhile, the Fever, I'm seeing talent develop before my eyes. I'm seeing young players figure it out, and it's exciting. Caitlin Clark and the Fever got a big win yesterday over the Minnesota Lynx. This team is on an upward trajectory, and I'm going to talk about that when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Tickets. Hope you're having a good Monday. I hope you're out at the Dan Dockage golf outing happening today, raising money to buy kids bikes. Great cause. Hopefully it's going well. I'm sure it is. I know that, people that listen to the station love Dan. I know you guys are out there supporting him. It's great. It's awesome. Yeah, it's great. So let's move on. I want to talk Caitlin Clark. So while the Colts and Chris Ballard are failing everybody, Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever they're continuing to improve. They're on this upward trajectory, and it's so much fun to watch. The Fever just wrapped up a tough 5-game stretch where they played the Las Vegas Aces, who are currently third in the WNBA standings, the New York Liberty, who are currently first in the WNBA standing, the Mystics, who suck, the Mercury, who are sixth in the WNBA standings, and the Minnesota Lynx they played yesterday, who were fourth in the WNBA standings. That is a tough stretch of games. Okay, like 4 out of those 5 teams are firmly in the playoff race with like multiple Olympians, like really good teams. That is a tough stretch of games. And the Fever went 3-2. 3-2, that's impressive. There's no way whatsoever that the Fever would have gone 3-2 in that stretch a month ago. Okay, part of why they've improved is because Caitlin Clark has improved. Okay, like during that 5-game stretch, she was awesome, including a triple-double against the New York Liberty. Okay, and part of why they've improved is because of Caitlin Clark. Okay, like over this tough stretch against good teams and talented opponents, Caitlin Clark has averaged 19.5 points, 11 assists, and 6.5 rebounds a game. Those are insane numbers for anyone in the WNBA against any of the teams. But this is Caitlin Clark, a rookie, against some of the best teams in the WNBA putting up these numbers. Okay, she is taking another step in her development. She is starting to figure out how teams are defending her, and it's leading to a slight uptick in the scoring, especially over these last 5 games. For the season, she's averaging a little over 16 points a game. She was up at pretty much 20 over these last 5. Right, so like we're seeing this slight uptick in scoring, but it's also leading to more assists. That is really where we're seeing the improvement. And because of that, Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell have both put up better numbers themselves. Kelsey Mitchell averaged over 20 points a game through that tough 5-game stretch against some of the best teams and best competition in the WNBA. Aaliyah Boston has averaged 16 points and 11 rebounds during this tough 5-game stretch. Okay, like that's a double-double. Like that's good. That's great production from the former number 1 overall pick. Okay, the Fever's 3 best players averaged more points in that 5-game stretch compared to their normal averages. Okay, like they're all getting better. And it's a sign of them not only improving, which makes sense because these are 3 young, talented players, right? Like Caitlin Clark, obviously a rookie, trying to figure things out, and she's starting to. Aaliyah Boston, it's only her 2nd year in the WNBA. Okay, it's not like she's, an 8-year vet. Okay, it's her 2nd year. She's figuring things out as well, and she's kind of had to relearn the offense because now she's playing with this dynamic point guard in Caitlin Clark. That's leading to her getting more easy buckets. But like there's an adjustment period with that, right? Kelsey Mitchell, only her 3rd year in the league. She's learning things and trying to improve her game as well. And so not only are these 3 talented women starting to, figure out how to play together, they're just becoming better basketball players, which makes sense because they're young. They haven't been in the league for very long. And it's impressive. Okay, and over the last month, we are really seeing this team come together and start to win games. The best records in the WNBA since June 13th, so basically a month. The Las Vegas Aces have the best record since June 13th. They're the defending champs with a record of 11-2. The New York Liberty, the runner-ups from last year, they are 9-2 over the past month. And with the 3rd best record in the WNBA, it is the Indiana Fever, who went 8-4. Okay. And a large part of this is because Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, and Caitlin Clark are all playing well and they're figuring out how to play together. But the other part of this is Christy Sides, who has been given this impossible task of trying to coach Caitlin Clark in her rookie year. Okay, like being Christy Sides has to be terrible. Okay, you go from basically no one knowing who you are to all of a sudden the most anticipated WNBA player ever gets thrusted into your lap. And you're like, okay, not only do I have to manage this entire team, but I also have to manage this new player. And Caitlin Clark seems like she's pretty easy to coach, like not a diva, wants to win, is willing to do whatever, all those great things. But that doesn't make it any easier on Christy Sides, especially when you're dealing with all the people that want to watch Caitlin Clark succeed. Okay. And we have all these Twitter coaches going to Christy Sides, listing all of the things that she's doing wrong and how she's a terrible coach and how she needs to be fired and all these different things. But we look up, and over the last month, they have the third best record in the WNBA. And once again, like players are why you win and players are why you lose, right? But coaches can help or they can hurt. I think that good coaches in basketball just allow great players to be great, right? They have this innate ability of just not getting in the way of greatness. Meanwhile, bad coaches get in the way. That's what bad coaches do. They ruin opportunities for great players. And we have seen Christy Sides try to balance this of like, how do I rein in Caitlin Clark and help her succeed at this new level? And like, how do I highlight everybody else? And more importantly, how do I get this team to play defense? Right? Because if you've listened to Lynn Dunn on Dan's show, she comes on every Friday at around 1:00. If you listen to it, she has labeled Christy Sides as a defensive-minded head coach. And that was kind of my knock early in the year. It was like, look, like if she's a defensive-minded head coach, then why isn't this team playing defense? Right? And then she has her press conference where she's like, I can't get these women to buy in to play defense. And over this last month, they have. That is why they're 8-4. Okay, like you don't win that many games, especially with this tough of a stretch, like this tough 5-game stretch in there. Like you don't do that unless you figure out ways to get stops. Because yes, Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, and Caitlin Clark are brilliant offensive players, but you don't win games unless you can get stops. And Christy Sides has figured out a way to make that happen. She's changed some of the rotation. We're seeing Katie Lou Samuelson play more. We're seeing more Lexi Hull, right? Like we're seeing some different players out there, and it's good. It's helping this team defensively, and that's where they need the help because they're going to be fine on offense as long as two of their 3 best players are on the floor. Okay, like if Mitchell and Boston are on the floor, they're gonna score. If Clark and Boston are on the floor, they're gonna score. If Clark and Mitchell are on the floor, they're going to score. The question is, can the Fever get enough stops to beat some of these better teams? And over the past month, they have. And because of that, you have to tip your cap to Christy Sides, who has figured out a way to get this young team to play defense, which is hard to do because most young teams don't want to play defense. Okay, they don't. They just want to play offense. And when it comes to offense, the Fever, they're pretty good at that. The 3 best players yesterday were great on the offensive end of the floor against the Minnesota Lynx. Aaliyah Boston dominated on the interior. 17 points, 16 rebounds. Kelsey Mitchell led the Fever in scoring with 21 points. And Caitlin Clark had 17 points and 6 assists. Okay, when all 3 of them play well on the offensive end, the Fever are tough to stop. The question then becomes, can they get stops on the defensive end of the floor? And they did yesterday. Kelsey Mitchell, a little smaller, can really defend though, had a big block late in the game to kind of seal it, right? Like it was great to watch. The Fever, they're trending up and they're fun and they're good. And that's important. Dan and I have talked on his show, which is from noon to 3 usually. He's not on the air today, but we've talked about the importance of winning in terms of like maintaining this momentum that Caitlin Clark has. Like Victor Wembanyama had a lot of momentum this year. I think people were excited to watch him play for the Spurs, but the Spurs had one of the worst records in the league. And so people stopped watching. Whereas, the Fever have kind of figured things out and they're starting to win games. And because of that, people are still interested. So the Fever are fun. They're good. Caitlin Clark is hands down the best rookie in the league. She should be the rookie of the year. While I was gone, off on vacation, I noticed that there was some discourse about the WNBA Rookie of the Year. And a lot of it was centered around Angel Reese's 15-game double-double streak, which was both impressive and annoying. For Angel Reese to rebound as well as she has in her rookie season is impressive. Okay, like she's playing against full-grown women. Okay, and rookies in any sport usually come in lacking size and strength. Okay, because it's these young people who still kind of need to fill out a little bit, especially in basketball, where players tend to come in a little bit younger. And so seeing Reese rebound at this level, in spite of her lacking probably a little bit of strength compared to, women that are 28, 29, 30 years old and have been lifting weights for a long time. Like, it's impressive to see. The annoying part, however, of this is the stat padding late in games and the missed layups. Okay, she's awful around the basket. Okay, like if she was average, like if she could make half of her layups, like she would have a legit case to be the rookie of the year. But she can't make a layup. She can't. And the people citing this double-double streak as evidence as to why she should be rookie of the year, like they're just Caitlin Clark haters. That's the truth of it. Okay, and it's becoming easier and easier to identify these haters because Caitlin Clark is figuring it out. She's better than Angel Reese in pretty much every phase of the game. That being said, the best thing for the WNBA would be for Angel Reese to win Rookie of the Year. It would be. Why is that? There have been a lot of comparisons to, Magic and Bird when it comes to Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. And when we look at Magic and Bird, there was a constant kind of switching back and forth. Okay, for example, they meet in the NCAA championship game and Magic Johnson and Michigan State win. And then they go out the next year. And what happens? Larry Bird wins Rookie of the Year. Followed by that, what do you get next? You get Magic Johnson winning the title his rookie year. And then you get Larry Bird winning the title in their second year. There was this constant back and forth that kind of kept the conversation going. And with Caitlin Clark continuing to ascend and Angel Reese continuing to not be very good, around the basket, like she's starting to kind of descend. And the conversation is becoming more and more one-sided, which isn't the best thing for the WNBA, but hey, it's fun because Caitlin Clark in and of herself is fun. My guy Haas has joined the chat, and he's given me some Jarris Walker slander, which I have to combat when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
More winners, more often. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Wrapping it up. No Dan Dockich show today. He has his annual Tom Dockich golf outing, raising money to buy bikes for kids. Great cause. Support it in any way that you can. Now, today's a great day. I'm back on the air. Back from vacation, which was awesome, by the way. Went to Washington, D.C., saw a lot of amazing things. It's great. Had just the best time. So that was good. NCAA football comes out today. The new college football game comes out 4 o'clock. At 4 o'clock, I will be in my chair, locked and loaded, getting ready to go. And I was locked and loaded over the weekend watching the Summer League. And Jarace Walker clearly isn't a bust. He's not. He's a big wing that can impact the game in multiple ways. Okay, and if you've watched the first two games and you like Jarace Walker, you're going to say all the things that I'm about to say. And if you don't like Jarace Walker, then you're going to talk about the turnovers against the Nets. But here's the thing. Here's what I've noticed. The Caitlin Clark discourse is slightly similar to this. In terms of the people that like Caitlin Clark are going to sit back and they're going to focus on the points and the assists and the rebounds and how she has impacted the game in a positive way for the Fever. And the people that don't like Caitlin Clark are going to talk about some of the issues on defense and the turnovers. So if you want to know, whether or not people like Jarace Walker, listen to what they talk about. If they don't like him, they're going to talk about the turnovers that don't really matter because if he plays on the Pacers team, he's not going to have the ball that much. The ball is going to be in Pascal Siakam and Tyrese Halliburton's hands, not his. So I digress. Let's talk about the good stuff about Jarace Walker. He's a big wing. All right, and we've seen his abilities so far in the Summer League. The Pacers have come out and said that when they drafted him, they thought he was going to play power forward. But they have decided to move him to small forward for multiple reasons. Part of that being that Obi Toppin has emerged. They brought him back. He's going to play power forward. And obviously, they also have Pascal Siakam. So there aren't a ton of minutes available for him at that power forward spot. But there are minutes available at the small forward position. And he looks very capable of doing it. He's a big, small forward, which should help defensively. Because he's bigger, he rebounds the ball well. Okay, he had 6 rebounds against the Nets and 8 more against the Timberwolves yesterday. He can score it. Okay, he had 25 points against the Nets on 50% shooting. I watched the game, and I was somewhat concerned because he shot 0 of 3 from 3. I thought he had some opportunities to take some more threes, and he didn't for, whatever reason. He decided to attack the basket a little bit more, which is fine. I mean, he finished with 25 points and made half of the shot, so I can't really complain that much. And then I'm watching him last night play against the Timberwolves. And, he just shoots 5 of 11 from 3 on his way to scoring 15 points. I was just like, oh, okay. So this kid can shoot the ball. And so, offensively, in terms of scoring, he can score it, right? He shot 38% from 3 when he was playing with the Pacers during the regular season, which, once again, small sample size. So I'm not, basing everything on that. But, he goes 5 of 11 yesterday. He's got a decent little mid-range game. He's got this nice little turnaround jumper that he clearly likes to get to. And so, he's got some offensive ability, finishes around the rim well because he's, tall and long, and those things just kind of tend to help these guys finish around the bucket. Outside of scoring, though, he's a willing passer. He's also a very capable passer. Okay, they mentioned during the broadcast that when he was playing at IMG Academy, he played point guard for a year, right? So, he can handle the basketball. He's comfortable passing the ball. He has good vision, right? He had 4 assists against the Nets and then 4 more against the Timberwolves as well. He's shown through 2 Summer League games that he can do a bit of everything on offense, which is important because this Pacers offense that, they run with Rick Carlisle, you better be able to do a bit of everything. Okay, you better be able to put the ball on the floor and attack a closeout, which it looks like Jarace Walker can do. You better be able to pass the ball, right? Because this is a team that moves the ball extremely well, right? And you better be able to shoot it because you're gonna get open looks. And it seems like Jarace Walker checks all of those boxes, which is good and it's exciting. And obviously being able to score in the NBA is important. But the reason why I and other Pacer fans are excited about Jarris Walker isn't because of the offense. Because let's be honest, the Pacers have plenty of offense between Halliburton, Siakam, Miles Turner, Aaron Nesmith shooting 40% from three, Obi Toppin shooting it well. Like there's plenty of offensive options. TJ McConnell, plenty of offensive options for this Indiana Pacers team. The issues have been on defense, especially at the wing spot. And that is the role I think me and everyone else that wants the Pacers to win, that is the role that people want to see Jarris Walker fill. He's defended well through these two games. Okay, Rick Carlisle was interviewed during their game against the Brooklyn Nets. And Rick Carlisle mentioned how bigger teams tend to just defend better. And that's part of why Rick Carlisle likes the idea of moving Jarris Walker to the small forward position. He's bigger than everyone he's defended so far at the Summer League. Now, part of that is because, guys are younger, all those things. When he gets to the NBA, he'll probably defend some guys that are bigger than him, which is fine because he himself is a large human being, right? And his size, the wingspan and everything has had an impact, a positive one. He's swallowed guys up on some possessions, kind of like what you see Drew Holiday do to smaller guards sometimes. Not calling Jarris Walker Drew Holiday, but kind of that same thing is what it reminded me of. He stayed in front of the ball despite defending smaller guys. He's going to be a good defender. The offense is there. He didn't play much for the Pacers last year because the Pacers just had a lot of good players, which is fine, right? It would have been concerning if Jarris Walker didn't play and the Pacers had a bunch of bad players, right? That would have been concerning. But him not playing over guys like Obi Toppin and Pascal Siakam, it's not concerning at all. But I do think that he becomes a rotational piece for the Pacers next year. Okay, he clearly has taken some steps in terms of his ability to shoot the ball. Defensively, he looks good. I think is going to be, one of those top 8 rotation guys for the Pacers this next season. Johnny Furphy, I think, is the other guy that people were really excited to watch for the Pacers. He's the 35th overall pick, the Pacers' first selection in this past year's draft. And I like what I've seen. I thought he looked a lot better yesterday than he did in his first game against the Nets. He shot it decently well against the Nets, 4 of 11 from the floor, 3 of 8 from 3, 12 points, which is fine. A lot of his offense, though, was catch and shoot. Sometimes, he would, throw up a grenade with, 2 seconds left on the shot clock. That's kind of what his offense looked like against the Nets. And then yesterday against the Timberwolves, he only shot 2 of 8 from 3. Which is disappointing, right? Because he's supposed to be the shooter. But despite that, he still led the Pacers in scoring with 18 points, which is mightily impressive. And after watching him against the Nets, I was like, the kid's going to be fine, whatever. He's going to play in the G League. Man, after yesterday, my hopes are now really high, which I didn't want. He moves without the ball so well. It's truly an art form. It's something that guys don't do a lot of now. It's a lot of times it's okay, you go stand in the corner. We're going to run a high ball screen. No off-ball movement whatsoever. And that's just not the case with Johnny Furphy. So many of his points were catch, go up for a layup, catch and shoot 3, catch and pull up from mid-range. He cut to the basket for multiple dunks yesterday, right? Which then gives him the space to get off threes, right? Because, you fake a backdoor cut, you pop back out, catch and shoot, hopefully you make it. But it was impressive. Just watching him move without the basketball, which is important because when you're playing in an offense like the Pacers, you need guys who know how to move without the ball, especially since Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam are going to have it more than anyone else. So it's he really impressed me yesterday. He also grabbed 7 rebounds, which is great, right? He's small in terms of his frame. He's probably 6'7", but he's, maybe 160 pounds. Okay, the dude's pretty frail, which is normal for 19-year-olds who only played in college for a year. But he's tall, he's long, he needs to put some weight on. He's going to spend the majority of his time probably in the G League with the Mad Ants, which is fine. Okay, that's where a lot of second-round picks spend their time. Okay, guys like Oscar Tshiebwe, I think he was a second-round pick. He may have been a free agent signing, but either way, he spent a lot of time in the G League last year, and I really like Oscar Tshiebwe. Jarris Walker jumps off the screen at you when you watch this Pacers Summer League team, and so does Oscar Tshiebwe because of the effort that he plays with. He's listed at 6'9", but there's no way he's 6'9". He looks like he's closer to 6'6". I think he's shorter than Cheris Walker. Okay, it doesn't matter, though. It doesn't matter how big Oscar Tshiebwe is because he's going to grab every rebound. He plays so incredibly hard. But the guy just can't really seem to finish around the basket. Okay, like if I didn't know any better, I'd call him the Angel Reese of the NBA Summer League. All right, like that's how many layups I've seen him miss against the Nets, and he was 1 of 5 from the floor against the Timberwolves. Like I love his energy. I love how hard he played, but he just lacks the size and the finishing ability to play at the NBA level, which is kind of, disappointing. But I like him, and I wish that more players would play with the same effort and intensity level that Oscar Tshiebwe does. Like he doesn't take a possession off. And, you watch other guys, especially stars, they don't just take possessions off. They take entire games off. They're just like, yeah, I don't want to play tonight. And so they don't. And it's frustrating. I want to see guys give the effort and play with the intensity that Oscar Tshiebwe does because he doesn't give anything away. He fights for every rebound. He's engaged every time down the floor defensively. And players like that are easy to root for. And if more players played like him, then the overall product of the NBA would be so much better. It would be. So Oscar Tshiebwe, I don't think he's going to make the Pacers roster. But someone out there should pick him up and play him because he's going to bring energy and effort. And that's just a really infectious thing that can elevate, especially younger teams. Other players in the G League that I've been paying attention to, Cocaine Curry, also known as Reed Shepherd, is awesome. I said before the draft he was the best player. He torched the Lakers on Friday and then torched the Wizards last night. In that torching, he tore up Bronny James, who people have been ripping because he just hadn't played very well. He had he went like 3 of 14 against the Rockets, and it was rough. And people just absolutely cooked him on the internet, which isn't surprising. But let's just be honest. Bronny James isn't supposed to be very good right now. He was the 55th overall pick. Since when is the 55th overall pick in a draft expected to be as good as and compete with the 3rd overall pick, which Reed Shepherd was? Okay? Seriously. Like every 55th overall pick plays in the G League, and there's time taken for them to develop. Okay? And that is what we're going to see with Bronny James. There's going to be not only an adjustment period for him, because in some ways, he's basically going from playing high school to the NBA because he didn't get to play a ton last year at USC after the heart attack. He got to play some, but not a ton. I feel like he's just going from high school to the NBA, which is hard. Okay, so there's not only this adjustment period for him, but there's also going to be a development period because he's not a good shooter. He's not. Okay, he hadn't shot the ball very well, right? And we'll see. People are writing the kid off so quickly, and it kind of bothers me because I think he's going to be fine. He'll be a guy who can come off the bench and guard and knock down shots at some point because most players that enter the NBA develop their jump shot, right? This second round pick, the 55th overall pick, isn't the guy that people should be ripping. People should be ripping Alex Sarr, who scored 6 points yesterday and pulled down 3 rebounds as the number 2 overall pick. That's the guy that people should be going after and questioning how good he's going to be. Not Bronny James, the 55th overall pick. But hey, he's LeBron James's kid. So this was to be expected, right? This isn't surprising in the slightest. So that's just kind of the way that it goes. That's going to do it for the Real Jonathan Smith Show. I'm wrapping up. No Dan Dockett show today. He's out at his golf outing raising money to buy bikes for kids, which is just awesome. Love that for him. So good to be back. I'll be back on the air tomorrow from 10 to noon. Until then, though, I'm going to go home. I'm going to play the crap out of the new college football 25 game. Can't wait for it. Can't wait for my show tomorrow. It's going to be a good one. Top 10 Tuesday. Can't wait to get into all of that tomorrow, starting at 10 a.m. right here on Indy's Sports Ticket.